I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this past weekend, both the Directors Guild Awards and the BAFTA Awards have come out, and they're going to tell us a lot about the Oscar races. So I'm going to break down them, what they mean for the Oscar races, and then next week I'm going to be talking about all the different technical categories and what these guilds that are going to be telling us what they mean and what ultimately my picks are sort of for those categories. And then finally, the next week after that, I'm going to be giving my final predictions as to what I think will win at the 2021 Oscars. So we're really in the home stretch here. All of the precursors have happened. Now, here are my thoughts on both DGA and BAFTA, starting off with the DGA winners. I'm just going to get these out of the way because there's really only one category that's important, and that is the Best Feature Film for a Director category, and this went to Chloe Zhao. Unsurprisingly, it seems like she will be the second female director to win Best Director at the Oscars, and it seems like this really is a good sign for Nomadland. It's pretty much since day one she's been sort of pegged as the front runner because of how well liked the movie is, but how much she has such a distinct directorial style, because how she's sort of this up and comer. She's going to be directing her next movie being Marvel's Eternal, so there's a sort of big promise for her as a filmmaker. And just the history on the DGA Awards, they're incredibly accurate as to predicting what will also win for Best Director at the Oscars. Now, in the past decade, they've got it wrong a couple times. Last year with Sam Mendes, which is the sort of only real wrong one which they've got, because in 2012, they predicted, they gave it the award to Ben Affleck, of which Ben Affleck wasn't even nominated at the Oscars, and a very sort of surprise lack of nomination, if you remember that year. But really, we could say, oh, the Oscars are changing. Every year we see guilds and things be less predictive. And that's true. For example, last year, I thought Sam Mendes would definitely win for director, and then it went to Bong Joon-ho. So there's totally a chance for a surprise to happen. That being said, there is no indication whatsoever. At least with Parasite, we had a little bit of an inclination at, doing well and having the sort of passion fan base. With this, and then with the BAFTAs, which I'll be talking about later on, seems like Chloe Zhao is going to win for Best Director and then also sort of tie that up for Best Picture and sort of be a classical kind of a win. Then Darius Marder won for Sound of Metal for Best First Time Feature, which is interesting because it just tells us that Regina King was really far away from getting that nomination. And also that Sound of Metal is very strong, and we talked about it later on. We'll talk about later on in the BAFTA. I think it's going to walk away with at least 2 Oscars, maybe even a couple more depending on how things shake out. But the movie's very well liked, so seeing Darius Marder, I'm a big fan of that movie. I'm a big fan of him, so I'm glad he got the win there. So now into the BAFTA reactions and thoughts and analysis. So just at the top, I want to note that particularly with the acting category and the directing categories, there was essentially a panel of 12 people that voted on the nominations. Therefore, the nominations for the acting and therefore the acting races are sort of left inconclusive. That we can take some things out of these acting races, but not everything. They didn't tell us a lot about the nominations, and they won't necessarily even tell us a lot about the Oscar winners, because in some cases, someone like Carey Mulligan or Olivia Colman, these people weren't even nominated, so it's kind of hard to judge. In Best Lead Actress, Viola Davis and Carey Mulligan weren't even nominated, so that sort of leaves things up in the air. But it is important that the BAFTAs, all of the categories were voted on in terms of the winners by the entire British Film Television Arts Academy. So that's important, that the winners of these categories do mean something, in the sense that maybe Frances McDormand wasn't going against Carey Mulligan, so it's not a one-to-one comparison, but it's still enough to show that Frances McDormand is, say, more like than Vanessa Kirby. But without that out of the way, starting off with Best Picture, not a huge surprise, it went to Nomadland. BAFTA in recent years has been poor in predicting the Best Picture winner, going with, of course, La La Land and 3 Billboards in 1917. Yet I think they're going to be right this year. It seems like Nomadland has been winning everywhere, has been winning everything. It seems to be that it should sort of sweep, and because of how things have sort of turned out, it's also worth noting that I don't even think there's a real contender. I don't even think there's a number 2. It's like maybe Trial of Chicago 7, but right now, the way I see it, Trial of Chicago 7 is going to go empty-handed come Oscar night. So it seems to be Nomadland is the front runner. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of buzz to knock it out of that first position, and frankly, I don't even know who would knock it out at this time. So much so that I feel confident that Nomadland won Best Picture here. It will also win for Best Picture at the Oscars. And then, consequently, we just talked about the DGA reactions, but Chloe Zhao won for Best Director, so that's a situation where I expect her to fully win, both getting the DGA and BAFTAs, and because the movie's so liked, and because she's getting everything. So I'm very confident that Chloe Zhao will win for Best Director, as I am Nomadland winning for Best Best Picture. Then another kind of one surprise that we did have was the Best Lead Actor category. Chadwick Boseman has been winning pretty much everywhere and was nominated here, yet it went to Anthony Hopkins for The Father. Now, I mentioned in my potential upsets video that Anthony Hopkins would be the sort of assumptive potential upset in this category, with the assumption that many voters could say in this case, go with, I like Chadwick a lot. It's a shame that he died. But you know what? I really like Anthony Hopkins. He's really terrific in this movie. I'm going to give my passionate vote there, and everyone else can vote for Chadwick. And then if enough people did that, theoretically, yes, Chadwick could lose. But I think this is the one indication where The Father had sort of a bit of a British bias, similarly with Anthony Hopkins. If we look at an actor like Chadwick Boseman, he has literally been winning everything, critics awards, SAG. This is the one thing he sort of lost. But that being said, it's also sort of a weird thing with BAFTA that they're not particularly celebratory of black actors. Someone like Denzel Washington hasn't even been nominated before, even though he's won twice at the Oscars. So there's a little bit of weirdness there, and I think also, of course, Anthony Hopkins is from Wales, so he's a British actor, so I think they sort of have that hometown bias, and they like the movie a lot, so they wanted to give it there. So I don't predict it to win at the Oscars. Especially Chadwick, I think the Academy for the most part is particularly largely American, even though they're more international. They are still an American branch, and if you look at Chadwick, one of his movies, Black Panther, which was nominated for Best Picture, it was a phenomenon there that even was less so in something like Britain. So it's more of an impact. I think his death for some of the American members of the Academy. And frankly, I'd still be shocked if Chadwick lost the Oscar to Anthony Hopkins. Then Best Lead Actress went to Frances McDormand, which is a huge kind of surprise in the sense that we don't know who's going to win Best Lead Actress. Carey Mulligan won Critics' Choice. Viola Davis won SAG, Andra Day won Golden Globes, and now Frances McDormand won BAFTA. So there's a huge divide of who is going it to be. I'm still debating. Right now I'm on the Carey Mulligan train because particularly of how well Promising Young Woman did here, and because of her sort of performance and how the Oscars try to work things out, where Viola already has one, Frances already has one. Andra Day maybe could pull off the surprise, but Promising Young Woman is more of the well-liked movie. So Frances McDormand, really her only competition in this category was Vanessa Kirby. So there could be a scenario very much where Frances McDormand rides the wave to something like Nomadland. If you really think Nomadland, like I do, is such a front runner, it's like, okay, well, maybe it gets picked, it's getting picture, it's getting director, it's probably getting cinematography. Well, is it really only going to get 3 wins? Maybe it will pick up a screenplay. Maybe it will pick up a Frances McDormand and ride that wave, because this category is very much up in the air, and I wouldn't criticize you for picking Frances McDormand, but this is interesting that it's not really a huge tell, but the only thing it really tells us is that Frances McDormand is more liked than Vanessa Kirby. Then we have Best Supporting Actor, Daniel Kaluuya, who's been winning everywhere, and I really do hope he wins the Oscars. It seems like that's what's going to happen because he's such a terrific actor and winning seemingly for the right role, which very rarely happens, I feel like, at the Oscars, so I'm glad that's going to happen. And then Best Supporting Actress, Yoo Jun-yeon from Minari has won once again. Winning SAG, I think, is important. Now, it's worth noting that she didn't go up against Glenn Close or Olivia Colman for The Father or Amanda Seyfried for Mank. She went up against the only competitor she was Maria Bakalova for Borat, which tells me that, because Borat didn't surprise and get an adapted screenplay, that probably that movie's going to go out empty-handed, and that probably Yoo Jun-yeon is going to win for Minari. The fact that she won here, even though Minari didn't win any other award. It didn't even win for Best Film Not in the English Language, I think is telling that they really like her. And if you look at it, Minari is a well-nominated movie, got in for director, got in for screenplay. Yet you look at the Oscars, and it's probably only going to win 1 award. Where's that award? Where's that support going to go to? I think it's going to go to Yoo Jun-yeon. So with this BAFTA win, I think it only reconfirms the fact that she is definitely the front runner in this category, but I could still see sort of a Marcia Gay Harden, Pollock, Amanda Seyfried, Mank kind of surprise. That would be interesting, but right now I think the safe bet has to go with Yoo Jun-yeon. Then I mentioned earlier, Best Adapted Screenplay surprisingly went to The Father. I think this is the most fascinating category of the night, only because this is the one that I think could switch, where I think Anthony Hopkins probably won't win. I don't think Frances McDormand will win. I think this is actually telling, the fact that Nomadland was nominated here. Now, The Father and Nomadland, I think, are the 2 frontrunners in this category. Both were not nominated at the WGA, so we can't sort of look at that for any comparison. So now it's up to, what do you think is the support? in my opinion, I look at this and I go, well, is this a British bias? They liked the movie, but not that much. I mean, they gave it to Promising Young Woman for Best British Film, but the movie is very much a screenplay. You know, it's based off of a play. We know the movie is very well liked. The Father at the Academy, you know, got in for editing, it got in for production design, so it overperformed at the Academy in terms of nominations. And then you look at your board and you go, wait, The Father, I'm not giving it any wins. And in the past, the Academy has really loved giving movies that's nominated for Best Picture one award. So they really love spreading the wealth. So Nomadland gets one, Mank gets one, Charlie Chicago 7 gets one. Where I look at it and I go, well, The Father I think should get something. So my indication is that if it were to get anything, I don't think it's going to be Anthony Hopkins. I don't think it's going to be Olivia Colman. Actually, screenplay makes sense here because it had just won, because it's from a playwright, because it's very sort of dialogue heavy in that sense. And of course, it's interesting editing and it's very filmic in that sense, but it is still based on a play. So they maybe want to reward Christopher Hampton and Florian Zeller for their achievement there. So for me, it's like when going to Oscar night, what do you believe? Do you believe in sort of the spreading the wealth theory in terms of The Father getting something, so they give to adapted screenplay? Or do you believe that it's going to go to Nomadland because they just love that movie so much that they want to give it something? It's interesting to see because this is the British Academy, we can't really tell if this was a British bias or not. But right now, I think I'm probably going to go with adapted screenplay for The Father. That was the big takeaway for me because Nomadland lost year, and because if you think about it, Nomadland isn't a very sort of dialogue-heavy kind of a movie. I think come Oscar night, it will go to The Father for Best Adapted Screenplay. But that category right now, I still think is up in the air. Best Original Screenplay went to Promising Young Woman. Unsurprisingly, it winning here, it winning at WGA. The one thing I can think of is, well, Charlie Chicago 7 may have 0 wins, and the SAG Ensemble gave it to Trial of Chicago 7, so there's still a chance that they want to get something. I mean, it had a bunch of nominations. Will it really go home empty-handed? Maybe, but maybe they'll want to give it to something like Screenplay. Yet, I still think I'm going to predict Promising Young One because it won BAFTA, because it beat out Trial of Chicago 7 at WGA, because it's sort of in the line, I think, of Birdman or Her or Get Out, these original screenplay winners that are very much original ideas or unique ways of telling stories. I think Promising Young Woman sort of fits into that box of an interesting kind of subversive, confrontational kind of a movie. Whereas Trial of Chicago 7, Aaron Sorkin's sort of previous winner, he wasn't nominated for director, and someone like Emerald Fennell was nominated for director, so I think they respect her a little bit more at this time, and they've already given one to Aaron Sorkin, and Trial of Chicago 7 is more traditional in that sense, and original screenplay has always favored movies that are bolder, like Promising Young Woman, so I expect that to repeat come Oscar night. Then Best Editing went to Sound of Metal, which was another kind of maybe surprise for some people, but in my opinion, I've been predicting Sound of Metal for a while. I've been talking about in my previous videos that Trial of Chicago 7 could walk away with nothing because I was predicting Sound of Metal to win for Best Editing, and it winning here, I think, gives me sort of the confidence to push it through to the edge. Now, this Wednesday, I believe, there's going to be the Ace Eddie Awards, which is the editing guild, which will tell us maybe, if Sound of Metal wins there, then lock it in, it's going to win at the Oscars. Or maybe Trial of Chicago 7 wins there. Now it's going to be a split. Now the category usually goes with movies that are edited frequently and heavily, and that would be Trial of Chicago 7's favor. However, the movie isn't like a Ford v Ferrari or Whiplash, which is like heavy editing. It's more fast-paced than something like Sound of Metal or Nomadland, but that being said, it's still not a movie that's like super editing in your face kind of a movie. Whereas Sound of Metal, I think, is interesting to compare it to Whiplash because I think it's going to win for Best Sound, and it could also win now here for Best Editing because it has sort of a puts you in the character's perspective, see their worldview kind of a way. And if you think about the sound, you think about the experience watching that movie, the editing is sort of tied and linked to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sound of Metal wins at Ace Eddies and it just sort of locks it in there. However, if Trial of Chicago 7 wins at the Ace Eddies, I may have a little bit of a debate. But it's interesting to see Sound of Metal do well here, plus with the Darius Martyr win at DGA, showing the sort of support for that movie is strong, is real. Then for Best Documentary, I went with My Octopus Teacher, which is a movie I've been telling you guys for weeks is a real contender and will win for Best Documentary. A lot of people didn't even have it in their predictions to get nominated, but when you looked at the facts, when you looked at all the nominations, it was getting in everywhere. It is the most well-nominated documentary. Then it wins here at BAFTA. Then it wins at PGA. And still some people are going with a movie like Time, for example, or another example. I mean, you have to look at the stats at the end of the day, and there's this weird sort of of bias against My Octopus Teacher, but it has everything going for it. It has won the BAFTA, has won PGA. It is the most well-nominated movie. It's from Netflix. It has an interesting story of, like, I think American Factory or Icarus, past winners. There's so many things going for it that if you're stubborn against My Octopus Teacher, if you think Time is still going to win, I think you're fooling yourself. You have to look at the facts. I've been saying it for weeks. My Octopus Teacher will win Best Documentary at the Oscars. This once again just confirms it. So if you're looking at your predictions, make sure you have My Octopus Teacher in for Best Documentary. I feel confident it will win. Then Best Animated Film, it went to Soul. No surprise here, that will win come Oscar night. And then Best Score, Best Original Score, also went to Soul, which is another not a big surprise. I expect it to win come Oscar night as well. It's also worth knowing that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross were dual nominated for Soul and Mank, so it was one of those situations where could there be a vote splitting? No, because it's pretty clear that Soul is the movie that has sort of risen as their best score of the year, and a terrific score in my opinion, so I'd love to see it win, and I do think it will win for Best Animated Feature, but also Best Original Score. Best Cinematography went to Nomadland, which was maybe a little bit of a debate. Is it going to go with Mank because of that black and white cinematography, or Nomadland? I feel confidently with this win, it will go to Nomadland, because I think Nomadland's going to win Best Picture, and then it's going to win Best Director. Well, where else is it going to win? I think it's going to win Best Cinematography. Well, 3 wins, that's kind of enough. Maybe it wins for Screenplay, or maybe Francis and it sort of sweeps. Although we have seen less sweeps throughout the years. I mean, but something like Parasite was a bit of a sweep last year. So maybe we see that here, but I think the fact that it won here sort of solidifies it that no, Nomadland is going to beat Mank. There's no sort of real contender. It should very well win because of sort of its unique style. Terrence Malick has beautiful cinematography as well. So I would love to see it win. And with this win, it kind of just assures me we'll have to see what the ASC, the American Society of Cinematographers, where that goes. But I expect with the Nomadland love and everything, it will go to Joshua James Richards and therefore give him the win. Then Best Film Not in the English Language went to another round, which in my opinion was a bit of a surprise because Minari was nominated in this category. Now, Minari is a well-liked movie at the Oscars. However, it is not competing in this category. So really what this tells us is that another round will win at the Best International Feature category at the Oscars. However, the one slight thing that you can think pull away from this category is because another round beat out Minari in this category at BAFTA, that maybe Minari is not as well loved of a movie at BAFTA, but then you go, well, Yu Jun-yeon won for supporting actress. So if there's maybe a slight edge against, Yu Jun-yeon for Best Supporting Actress, it's the fact that, this British bloc doesn't really love this movie, because if they loved it, you would think it would beat out something like Another Round. So maybe there's a little bit of a concern there. That being said, I still expect someone like a Yu Jun-yeon to win at the Oscars, but it's interesting to see Minari actually not win here and still go with Another Round. But at the end of the day, Another Round will win, I think, for Best International Feature at the Oscars, so you can pencil that one in too. Then Best Costume Design went to Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which in my opinion is still an up-in-the-air category. Now, we'll have to see what the Costume Designers Guild does. They haven't released their results yet, and I think it's going up against Emma as its big Titanic of a competition, we'll say. But if it wins there, then it's pretty confidently that I will put Costume Design and give it to Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. That'd be fascinating for a movie if it were to win Costume Design, if it were to win Makeup and Hairstyling and Chadwick Boseman. 3 wins without a Best Picture nomination, I think is either tied for or the most, well, I guess you have to look back. So I think it's tied for the most amount of wins without a Best Picture nomination. And if Viola Davis wins, that would be even crazier. So we know the movie has support. It got, of course, here at BAFTA for Costume Design. It had Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman for the SAG Awards. So we know the movie still is well liked. So I expect it to beat out a movie like Emma, because that movie is not as well sort of generally liked. So we have to remember the Oscars are voted on by everybody. So generally, if you're not a huge costume design fanatic and you just like Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, you'll go for that there. So many of these technical categories will go to movies that are either nominated for Best Picture or the most Best Picture like in the case of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. However, sort of the designs and the period piece of everything of Emma, I could see very well. It just seems like that kind of a win that we've seen before, like in Anna Karenina, for example. So I could see that win come Oscar night. And if it does go to Emma for something like Costume Designers Guild, then I may be forced to put Emma in my Oscar predictions. But right now, it's still going to be Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Then Best Makeup and Hairstyling. Similarly, I thought maybe it's going to be Hillbilly Elegy, but then the Makeup and Hairstyling Guild came out, and it was split between Pinocchio and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So those are my two options. Then BAFTA came out, gave it to Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and very much so it seems like it's going to be that same scenario here. And has the sort of act transformative element, has the period element to it, has the different hairstyles, male, female, so in the hotness and how that changes things. So it's the distinctive makeup and hairstyling movie. It is the most best picture like out of the nominees. Now maybe Mank could surprise, but frankly everything has been telling us, the Guilds, BAFTA, that it's going to go to Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So don't overthink this category. I think you could maybe overthink costume design depending on how the Designers Guild goes, but right now from the Art Directors Guild and the best makeup and hairstyling category here at the BAFTAs, I think it will go to Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. But what will go to Mank is Best Production Design, which won here at BAFTAs. It also won at the Art Directors Guild. I just realized I had mentioned Art Directors Guild for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, but the point being, for makeup and hairstyling, it should be Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. But for Best Production Design, it's going to go to Mank, because Mank won for the best production design at the Art Directors Guild, also won here. And if you look at it, like I said earlier, I believe in the Academy spreading the wealth, giving every Best Picture nominee at least one win. When you look at Mank, it's the most well-nominated movie of the night. It doesn't maybe have that passionate support, but what I do think it does have passionate support for is the period detail that it occurs, and you would give that support to the Best Production Design category. It also fits in with other past winners. You look at last year, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a few years previously, La La Land, so the old Hollywood kind of a recreation, Warner Brothers lot, feels very authentic to the movie, and oftentimes period movies or fantasy movies do well here. So the fact that it's a Best Picture nominee, the fact that I don't think it's going to get any other wins, so here's the support, the fact that it's the Hollywood element and fits in the milieu of past Oscar winners, it just makes all the sense in the world. Best Sound went to Sound of Metal, which if it doesn't win at the Oscars, it will be a tragedy. We know the movie's very well liked. Sound of Metal, the sound is literally in the title. Very unique, interesting sound design. Lock it in for winning the Oscar as well. Best Visual Effects, a very weird category, but this BAFTA award went to Tenet. That's not necessarily saying that it's going to win. We saw at the Visual Effects Society that actually Tenet lost to The Midnight Sky. So you may go, okay, well, Visual Effects Society is Midnight Sky, Tenet is BAFTA, who you're going to go for. It's kind of a split, hard to tell. But there's some rules that you generally want to apply to this category. First of all, always go with the Best Picture nominee. Oftentimes movies like First Man or Interstellar win because they're either Best Picture like in those cases, or something that's just because they like the movie very much. It's a Best Picture nominee, it gets a win in something like visual effects. However, in this year where we don't have a Best Picture nominee, it's a case like First Man or Interstellar, where everyone was predicting Avengers Infinity War to win, and I predicted First Man, and what happened? It went to First Man, because at the Oscars, they often like to go with movies that have little visual effects, sort of seamless, worked into the movie, seem like practical. Things like First Man, things like Interstellar, versus an Avengers, which is very CGI heavy. They like to go with movies that are very much more subtle and feel a little bit more sophisticated. And this year, I think that's Tenet. Now, you could go the same reasoning with something like The Midnight Sky, but Tenet, I think, didn't totally disappoint at the Oscars. I mean, it didn't get in for Best Score, but it got in for Production Design and got in here. But The Midnight Sky, I think, disappointed because it didn't get in for Best Score. I think it disappointed because it didn't get in for Best Production Design. So you look at the movies, Midnight Sky has 1 nomination, Tenet has 2 nominations. The only other movie with 2 nominations in this category is Mulan. I don't think they're going to give it to visual effects here for Mulan because, of course, the BAFTA went to Tenet. So Tenet feels like the sophisticated pick. It feels like the traditional pick. It also feels like, I think a lot of people respect the technical craft of this movie, and they're not going to give it to production design. So, hey, give it to visual effects here. Fits in the past winners kind of a brand and how they've been sort of rolling out. So I still expect Tenet to win for Best Visual Effects, despite the Visual Effects Society loss. especially when you consider the other category, other potential winners. Love and Monsters, no. One and Only Ivan, no. I mean, if it was maybe a strong movie, it would have gone for Best Original Song, so not that. I don't think Mulan doesn't have a lot of passionate love, but Tenet does have fans and has the sophisticated element to it, so I still expect Tenet to win. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know what your thoughts were from BAFTA. Are you going to go with The Father for Best Adapted Screenplay? Does this mean maybe Frances McDormand could win for Best Lead Actress, or Anthony Hopkins? Does this mean Trial of Chicago, someone's going to go home empty-handed? I'm not super confident in that. That feels a little bit icky because, you know, it's such a strange story where that could have won Best Picture. It could still win Best Picture, I think. But it could also walk away with 0 wins. A fascinating kind of a scenario that we haven't seen in a while, in my opinion. But that'll be interesting to see in your comments down below. I'd love to hear them. But that's about it, guys. Until next time, stay tuned.